Si metes la cabeza donde no te llaman, se te mocha la cabeza.
Oh my God, they have guns. Jesus,
Go, 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 go,
no.
Listen, we all know Mexico's drug cartels can be especially cruel when dealing with anyone who stands in their way, but let me ask you this. When you think of cartels, what do you think is their weapon of choice? I'm betting you're probably thinking of something along the lines of knives or guns. So what if I told you that they're now using drones to launch their vicious attacks?
¿Un dron o qué?
That's right. Long gone are the days when cartel members would stick to ground violence. They've been keeping up with technological advancements just as much as the rest of the world. And why wouldn't they? Not only that, but they're also using the very same drones for surveillance purposes, which is some pretty terrifying news when you think about it. Who would have thought that the age-old game of cat and mouse would get such a high-tech twist? Get ready to dive into one crazy story, full of twists and turns, and let's find out what the US is doing about all this. Recently, there has been a surge in the use of drones by Mexican cartels to monitor US Border Patrol activities. And these aren't just hobby drones buzzing about. We're talking about sophisticated, high-end gadgets used to scout and gather intelligence in real time. Imagine this. Thousands of drone attacks are being reported every single month. They're infiltrating US airspace to keep tabs on Border Patrol movements. The number of such incidents has been so shocking that it even prompted officials to discuss it during the Senate Arms Committee back in May.
The number of incursions was something that was alarming to me. I don't know the actual number. I don't think anybody does, but it's in the thousands. I would say in the probably over a month.
So, what's the deal with these cartels and their high-tech espionage? Well, they are using drones to navigate the dense border terrain. They need to identify any weak surveillance spots that they might be able to take advantage of in the future. This will allow them to orchestrate their trafficking operations with surgical precision. It's like a game of chess, really, but with drones as pawns and billions of dollars at stake.
They know it's an extra tool that they can use so they can continue to bring their drugs across.
Cartels aren't new to adopting advanced technology. For them, this is a matter of survival and expansion. By utilizing drones, they can outmaneuver law enforcement, making it increasingly challenging for authorities to stem the flow of drugs and human trafficking. The border between the US and Mexico is about 2,000 miles long. It's one of the longest in the world, and it's a hot zone where cartels like the Sinaloa and the CJNG are fiercely dueling for absolute control. These organizations capitalize on areas that are lacking in surveillance to smuggle narcotics and people, amassing wealth and perpetuating violence in the process. Adam Isaacson, from the Washington office on Latin America, stresses that power vacuums within the cartels have only added more chaos on top of the already dire situation along the US-Mexican border.
Hay inestabilidad causada por la salida del Chapo Guzmán, la salida de la extradición de uno de los hijos del Chapo Guzmán, más divisiones dentro del cartel de Sinaloa, más competencia por las rutas especialmente del fentanilo.
As factions within the Sinaloa cartel compete for control, violence then escalates. So regions along both sides of the border become increasingly more dangerous. But when you think about it, this all ties back to what we've seen over the past few decades. Cartels evolving from simple trafficking gangs into complex crime syndicates who are becoming masters of advanced technology as time goes on. That being said, law enforcement agencies on both sides of the border have no choice but to always upgrade their surveillance and intelligence gathering techniques in order to counteract these sophisticated criminals.
They have all this money, all of this power, this increase in size operationally. I would say that these drones do become a national security problem.
But why are these drone incursions such a big deal? Beyond the immediate fear of drugs and illegal immigrants crossing the border, these drones can give cartels real-time intelligence on US patrol locations, shifts, and blind spots. It effectively places the US Border Patrol in a constant state of reaction, always a step behind their adversaries.
What the cartels have proven time and time again is that they will do mostly anything for money.
As this high-tech cat-and-mouse game unfolds, it's clear that maintaining an edge over these cartels requires innovative strategies and enhanced cooperation between Mexican and US authorities. Coordinated efforts and shared intelligence could make it harder for cartels to exploit technological gaps. But as we understand the magnitude of this new approach by the cartels, it leads us to wonder, what are the broader implications of these flying spies? How have drones revolutionized the game for these cartels? We've established that cartels are using drones to monitor US border patrols. But this raises a bigger question. How did we get here? How did drones evolve from being cool gadgets you'd see at a park to becoming sophisticated tools of terror deployed by organized crime? The first recorded instance of a weaponized drone in Mexico dates all the way back to 2017, when Mexican federal police stopped a car loaded with guns and what was described as a bazooka bomber drone. This drone was packed with explosives ready to dive bomb its targets. Early attempts like this were simple and didn't require much know-how, but they were the ones that set the stage for what was to come. Fast forward to 2021, and the cartels have seriously upped their game. The CJNG cartel, which is pretty well known for its advanced paramilitary techniques right now, was already using weaponized drones to attack police forces.
¿Un dron o qué? ¿Dónde está el dron?
And these drones were no longer experimental. They had become essential tools in the cartel's arsenals. Reports from various security journals, as well as the CJNG themselves, summarize how these drones have a significant psychological impact, sowing fear among rival cartels, law enforcement, and even innocent civilians.
This is modern warfare. We use war technologies. We use drones. Here, everybody is adequately trained to use them to the maximum so that they can hear that thunder.
One particularly horrifying account comes from Guerrero, a state in Mexico that has become a testing ground for drone warfare.
The Jalisco New Generation Cartel has created a specialized elite drone unit where these members of the cartel are being trained to turn commercial drones into flying bombs to attack rivals and Mexican authorities.
The CJNG specifically targeted homes, schools, and even churches using drones equipped with high explosive munitions, and the exact number of people who lost their lives that day is still unknown. And wait until you hear about who has been allegedly training these guys to operate these drones.
A cartel source telling the Daily Beast that an American man actually trained those cartel members on how to source, fly, and use these commercial drones and turn them into bombs.
You heard that right. Someone from within the US has been purposefully giving out some pretty valuable information to the cartels to aid them in committing these crimes. But why drones? Well, it's tricky. For one, drones are relatively cheap compared to other forms of military tech. You can buy a high-end commercial drone for just a few $1,000s, strap on some homemade explosives, and you've got a flying weapon that can be controlled remotely. Moreover, drones provide a degree of anonymity and distance for the operator, therefore reducing the risk of immediate retaliation. And, as we've previously established, you can't really ignore the shock value that these weapons tend to have. It's psychological warfare at its most brutal.
Es una manera pues de atacar a su enemigo con las bombas pues, de los drones.
¿Tú lo viste los drones? Cuando lo van armando y lo van poniendo. ¿Cómo lo viste y cómo están?
Están grandes, son drones grandes.
And it's not just about dropping bombs. Many cartels are exploring drones' potential for surveillance. This capability comes in handy for various illicit operations, such as scouting new trafficking routes or keeping an eye on rival gangs and police activities. Drones can fly high above, capturing real-time data and transmitting it back to operators who can make quick, informed decisions. As these drones crisscross Mexican skies, trafficking narcotics isn't the only concern. They also pose risks to U.S. national security.
Flying in the skies over the Rio Grande Valley. 10,000 cartel drone incursions and 25,000 drone sightings were recorded last year in the sector alone. Scouts watching every move being made on the U.S. side.
These drones aren't just a nuisance. They gather crucial intelligence on U.S. Border Patrol activities, further complicating an already challenging task.
The adversaries have 17 times the number of drones, twice the amount of flight hours, and unlimited funding to grow their operations.
So, what's being done to counter this airborne menace? Well, Border Patrol agents and even the Mexican government have been ramping up their anti-drone measures. This includes equipping forces with technology to intercept or disable these drones mid-flight. One of the most powerful tools in this fight against drones is this airborne device called the Tethered Aerostat Radar System.
We fly as close to 24/365 as we can. Our law enforcement operators that see that on the radar will then engage and get the drugs, get the bad guys that are waiting for the drugs.
There are also ongoing discussions about increasing penalties for those caught using drones for criminal activities, as well as using technologies meant to bring down these drones.
Mexican president is also going to be equipping the Mexican army with anti-drone technology.
So now that we've seen the sky's dangerous turn, let's now ground ourselves by examining the broader crisis at the US-Mexico border, where these high-tech tools are just one part of a much larger and more complex puzzle. The US-Mexico border is more than just a geographical frontier. It's a hotspot where things like drug trafficking, human smuggling, and organized crime collide violently. Imagine you're cruising down a sunlit highway, enjoying the open road. Suddenly, your joyful drive comes to an abrupt halt as a group of heavily armed men steps onto the street, and they're not law enforcement or the military. This isn't a scene from an action-packed gangster movie. It's an everyday occurrence in regions dominated by cartels.
Guárdame el teléfono, por favor, porque no te lo quiero quitar. Ok. Guárdamelo.
Oh, no, que tenemos el mapa nomás.
Bueno, hijo, hay que ponerle $1000 aquí para la mañana, 500 y 500 para que se me vayan bien.
These encounters can range from benign to straight up terrifying.
Oh my God, they have guns. Jesus,
Go, 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 go,
no, no.
These checkposts are run by ruthless cartels like Sinaloa and the CJNG. One of the most alarming facts about the current border crisis is how deeply involved these cartels really are. They've essentially set up shadow governments, setting their own taxes, enforcing their own laws through violence, and challenging the state's control. Businesses operating in these areas are subject to relentless extortion. Residents live in constant fear, and corruption seeps through the very fabric of law enforcement and politics.
There's no security here, no peace, no tranquility. There's only fear. Crying and fear.
The presence of cartels stifles economic opportunities. Beautiful, historic parts of Mexico become ghost towns as word spreads about the dangers of traveling through cartel territory. Tourists stay away, businesses suffer, and entire communities face economic ruin. The grip of fear is palpable, reaching far beyond the immediate threat of violence. The Mexican government's efforts to combat these criminal syndicates have included deploying thousands of military and federal police officers along the border. Adding to the chaos, the cartel's advanced tactics create a cat-and-mouse game with law enforcement. For instance, new groups like CJNG came into the picture, and they even more brutal than their predecessors.
Si metes la cabeza donde no te llaman, se te mocha la cabeza.
These groups weren't just dealing drugs, they were engaged in an ongoing struggle for dominance, marked by brutal displays of power and control. Gruesome displays of power by the cartels are not uncommon.
They are finding heads in public parks, arms and legs in trash bags, bodies wrapped in blankets outside their homes.
This calculated use of terror is meant to maintain control and keep communities in line.
We're afraid of getting in a car, getting in a taxi, walking in the street alone.
And to make matters even worse, the CJNG has since started using innovative war tactics, including these dreadful drones, to make sure that no one stands in their way, which brings us to the current US-Mexico border crisis.
We have to beef up our intel. We have to beef up understanding and knowing where these drones are coming from, when they're going to come, where they're going to land.
Whatever your stance on the US-Mexico border crisis is, one thing's crystal clear. The only constant in these cartel-controlled areas is violence. It's so bad that many feel their only option is to flee, risking capture by US Border Patrol officers because anything is better than the hell they face back home.
Daniel made the 5,000-kilometer trip with his 2 young cousins to escape gang violence and poverty back home.
There's one reason, and one reason only, for the ongoing crisis, and that's profit. We're talking about billions of dollars at stake here, and cartels are more than happy to reach out and grab as much as they can. And the fentanyl crisis that's currently gripping the United States is a testament to this. The quest for higher profits has led cartels to produce fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 70 to 100 times more powerful than morphine. It's cheap and easy to produce, and the smallest amount can always be lethal.
If you don't go after who the problem is, which is these cartels, and crush their labs, you're just seeing the beginning.
This crisis has claimed tens of thousands of lives across every demographic, and judging by the sheer quantities that make their way through the border, this crisis isn't showing any signs of stopping anytime soon.
Americans are now more likely to die from an accidental opioid overdose than in a car crash.
Families are shattered by addiction, healthcare systems are overwhelmed, and the criminal justice system buckling under the pressure of drug-related crimes. The human cost extends far beyond those who overdose. Entire families are ruined. So when you hear their testimonies, it's hard not to find them heart-shattering.
I know he made a mistake. He made a big mistake that cost him his life. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. I'm devastated, I'm heartbroken, I'm shattered.
In the end, people on both sides of the border are suffering as we speak. Regular folks are enduring unimaginable violence and terror, driving them to desperate measures. When it comes to the US-Mexico border, every inch feels like it's rocking on the edge of becoming the next big smuggling route. Think about it, over 2,000 miles of shared border. How do you even begin to lock down that kind of expanse? It's a nightmare scenario with no easy answers. And US officials have proposed a wide range of solutions, ranging from drastic measures, such as former President Donald Trump's initiative to send actual kill squads to tackle the cartel leaders head-on, or Biden's more tame approach of dealing with the root causes of the current fentanyl epidemic in order to slow down the unhindered demand for the drug. Sadly, however, actual progress has been slow, and cartels are still carrying out these operations as we speak. So let's dig deeper into these plans and see what their possible outcome might look like. We all know that President Donald Trump has always been pretty vocal as far as the US-Mexico border crisis is concerned. For Trump, the cartels were more than just a problem. They were a direct threat to US national security. He didn't shy away from highlighting the opioid crisis either.
Lethal drugs are pouring across our wide-open border, stealing hundreds of thousands of beautiful American lives, and it's happening like never before in our history.
And his grand plan? It's labeling the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's right, he wanted to give them the same status as groups like ISIS. The goal? To take more aggressive actions against them. He boasted that his administration had significantly reduced drug trafficking through new border barriers and increased patrols, but critics didn't seem too convinced, saying the drugs and violence kept flowing regardless. But here's where it really gets wild. Trump allegedly floated the idea of sending US military forces straight to Mexico.
You also said recently that if you're reelected, you would send special forces and, quote, other military assets to Mexico to stop the drug cartels.
War on cartels. Mexico's petrified of the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico.
What's more, his defense secretary, Mark Esper, even said he had to pull him back from launching missile attacks on cartel leaders.
I'd say, Mr. President, I understand the motive. I had to explain to him, we can't do that. It would violate international law.
Now, while Trump's approach bordered on the extreme, President Biden's strategy is, let's just say, of a more cautious and collaborative nature. President Biden's administration is focused on a more holistic approach, emphasizing cooperation with Mexico and Central American countries. The idea here is to tackle the root causes of migration and cartel influence, things like promoting economic development, enhancing law enforcement collaboration, and rooting out the ever-present corruption. Remember when a former Mexican top law enforcement agent got busted for helping out the cartels?
Prosecutors called in former members of the cartel to testify against Luna. They claimed he received more than $200 million in bribes.
You heard that right. There's literally hundreds of millions of dollars to be made from being on the side of the cartels, so policymakers are treading one seriously thin line right now. During a press briefing, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced tough questions about Biden's stance on cartels operating close to the U.S. Biden has long been accused of not taking much drastic action in dealing with the border crisis.
Why is President Biden so comfortable with cartels operating so close to the U.S.?
Her response? Highly focused on the strides made in seizing fentanyl.
The work that this president has done, specifically on fentanyl at the border, it's at historic lows. On top of that, historic sanctions going after traffickers and other financiers are helping disrupt fentanyl supply.
The logic here is pretty straightforward. If you go after the demand, you will end up cutting off the cartel's primary source of income. But that's easier said than done. Reducing addiction levels in the U.S. is a monumental task. but Biden's team believes it's a critical component in weakening the cartels. Trump versus Biden. It's like comparing fire and water. Trump's approach is all about immediate and brute force, border walls, military intervention, and maximum pressure on the cartels. Biden, on the other hand, is looking at long-term solutions that address the underlying issues, poverty, corruption, and lack of opportunities that fuel the cartel's power. One thing's for sure. Neither strategy is without its challenges. Trump's hardline tactics received criticism for their potential to destabilize diplomatic relations and escalate violence. Biden's approach, while more gentle, faces the tricky task of actual implementation, which takes time and sustained effort. The battle against the cartels is far from over. For now, we watch, we wait, and we hope for a breakthrough that will bring an end to the chaos gripping the border regions. The stakes are high, and the consequences are even higher. Stay tuned, because this roller coaster ride is far from reaching its conclusion. While the challenges posed by cartels and their sophisticated use of technology are daunting, the combined efforts of law enforcement, community initiatives, and international cooperation do offer a path forward. As we continue to observe this evolving situation, it's crucial to stay informed and support measures that promote peace, security, and justice on both sides of the border. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, then click that subscribe button in order to always stay updated. Until next time, stay safe.